Good evening, everybody. Isn't it a pleasant and great evening? Okay, let me take this hat off. I want to honor the code. It is the sacred cowboy code. I have to have my sacred special hat on for this sacred evening that I'm about to explain. Isn't it a pleasant and wonderful evening? So, what do we need to talk about today? What's the importance about today when it comes to the Holy Scriptures? When it comes to certain things? The important thing is that you follow the Ten Commandments. You go to Exodus 20 and you look and scroll. You do Google search and you go through Exodus 20 and you remember that there's a link between Exodus 20 and the Child Protective Privacy Act, which has similar standards, which is you do not commit lust or adultery on the computer system. So I shall tell you a wonderful story about a very famous incident or a very famous episode that I went through when I was in college. I had taken a flight from British Airlines over to Switzerland, to the Swedish country. I had my passport and etc. I basically had an opportunity to be with my boss at the time. I'm not going to tell you her name for privacy sakes, but she was a very well-known person, and she ran a lot of exclusive businesses in France, and she was a clothing designer. So, when I was there, I was in the villa, the hotel, where they have a casino business. There were a lot of behavior that most priests, most rabbis, most people of the faithful orders do not follow. The reason why I was there was there was a very sacred meeting that was with her and her family in regards to the clothing business, in regards to the changes with artificial intelligence. The reason why I'm bringing up the sacred cowboy hat is when I was at Cornell University, the second time I was away, I was at that university and I was taking notes. I learned a lot of things about how software and computer software works and computer hardware works. And that is that artificial intelligence can't do most things. It can't process a human interaction. So, as an example, you're going to the store, you're going to go shop. Let's just say you're going to Macy's and you're going to go get a hoodie. And you're with your girlfriend, you're going for a girls' shopping trip. Now, there are places in Switzerland which is similar to most of the malls in the United States. And there are things that you have to understand. In the European countries, some of them, they don't accept legal tender. They were accepting card only, or you had to use a Samsung Pay or an Apple Pay or etc. at that time. So it was either card or they didn't really accept cash. At that point, it's kind of illegal because you're really not supposed to do that, because under Swiss law with the banking notes meaning has to do with euros. Switzerland uses euro currency. They also use pound currency in certain exchanges. The reason why I'm bringing this up is my boss and she was an entrepreneur, but she also had an engineering background, meaning she designed a lot of the programs like I did. So she knew about Linux and etc. All those programs. She knew how to set up an Excel spreadsheet. She knew how to do basically the forms to design programs with the command structure. The command structure means that when you're on a website, when you go and purchase something and you click, purchase, or you go back, that's when a software engineer or a computer engineer designs a website. But the problem is with a lot of those websites, they have to have tune-ups. And they're very expensive to have tune-ups, just like an accountant. An accountant has to do an audit, or an accountant could work at the place and do accounts receivables. There are separate positions for everybody, and you have to be able to understand that. When I was in Switzerland, I had an opportunity to interact with a lot of these rich billionaires and millionaire people. The reason why I'm bringing up artificial intelligence is a lot of these rules that you guys are not following, this artificial intelligence is going to turn against you. You're not going to command, open ChatGPT or etc. to be able to do certain people's jobs. You're not going to be able to get artificial intelligence to do certain work because it's going to turn against you. They're going to look at a YouTube video or etc. They're going to look at some of these TikTok videos and they're going to just turn against you and say, well, we're with the humans that are customer service people, or with customer service people, and we're gonna pick it with them, and then where are you gonna go with it? And that's ultimately what my boss told them nicely, is that there's no way that you're going to be able to manipulate them in any way. Manipulate meaning you're going to be able to tell them to do a command and then you're expecting them to do it. Most human people cannot do most trials, most steps, most algorithms, most systems have to go by A, B, C, D, E, F, G. The computer system works by ones and zeros. You cannot just make a command on a 2 when there is no 2 to begin with. It's the same thing. So if you're expecting to go to McDonald's and you have these self-checkout machines, you got to understand something. A lot of those self-checkout machines can get hacked. It's not really rocket science. You just go on ChatGPT or one of those programs similar to it, and you could put in certain information and it can give you answers to hack it. And that's what a lot of these hackers do. Now, later in life, well, recently, about 2 or 3 years ago, I graduated. I took Amazon, Google, and etc. courses, and I was certified and operated in, cybersecurity. But later, prior to that, I understood that you cannot maintain certain computer systems. Hackers can just get onto Mac OS or Windows OS systems, and they can just be able to just take over your computer. It is the same thing with artificial intelligence. You cannot just make a command. See, the reason why I talked about calling Alphabet Land for Google purposes, they tried to design a car. The reason why I added Alphabet to the initiative of what I said, Alphabet Land, Alphabet, that is the parent company of Google, and Google is a subsidiary. The reason why I said Alphabet Land is because you cannot expect self-driving vehicles to work. It is the same concept with an electric vehicle. Electric vehicles they take a lot of energy. Trucks and etc., they take double the battery, double the width, double the distance. You can't put, as an example, I'll show you as an example, because I can do a demonstration of this because I learned this in cybersecurity, because I understand watts and hertz and all of these algorithms to begin with. You can't have Tesla and many of these cars, you can't have a car here and a car right next to it near the same charging station. You got to have a car that's here and a car that's here. You got to have the car that's at a distance, because the charging stations can't handle that. The reason why they can't handle it is because it takes too much juice to charge one vehicle. Now, it is not Tesla's fault. It's just you don't have the resources. Now, what do you mean by resources exactly? John, what the heck are you talking about, resources? Resources means you got to have a battery operating system that is backed up or verified. Verified means Department of Transportation, and there's a thing that has to do with energy, which is Department of Energy, which has both to do with two things together. You cannot operate anything without energy. You're essentially, by you replacing the gas or you're replacing natural gas or etc., just like oil, if you're going to replace those, you're going to need the resources and people to do it. And I'm sorry to say this, in the state of New York and Connecticut and New Jersey, you do not have the resources. You have to have taxpayer backup to be able to do it. Let me repeat that. You have to have taxpayer backup to be able to do it. You do not have that. You cannot just make a law, force a person to do something without their permission. That is considered robbery. Let me explain that. Article 160, which I'm going to put on my phone right here, which is a robbery charge, which essentially you're doing, which is the same thing as traffic and commerce. You're not allowed to do that to begin with. At any point, you are not allowed to break certain laws. It is illegal. You can essentially go to prison for that. A cop cannot just point a gun at someone's head and say, give me $50. It is the same thing as a criminal. They can't do that. They have to have a reason to pull a gun at someone. And then what ends up happening with that, if they ever do something illegal like that or use unreasonable force or too much force to begin with, they can ultimately lose their license to begin with and get fired. Now, Article 60. That's Article 60. Article 60, it defines robbery as a forcible stealing of property from another person. So that's pointing a gun, pointing a knife. You're threatening them in any way. Even using your hands, just saying, I'm gonna hit you in the head if you don't give me $50 or $5 or etc. You can't force people or a person. An organization cannot force anybody to do a law without the permission of Congress or Senate. Besides Congress and Senate, you cannot do it in front of taxpayers, because they are essentially, if you want to be specific with the laws, they are essentially the ones that are have constitutional amendments, and you're breaking those constitutional amendments, and you're impeding on their laws. That has to do with the Second Amendment, which is the right to bear arms, and the Fourth Amendment, which has to do with unreasonable searches or seizures. That's like, as an example, someone comes to your house. Someone comes to your house and says they don't have a warrant, they're the police, and we want to search the house, and they don't have any. They just say, we want to search your house. Well, you can't search your house, you have to have a warrant. It's the same principles. This is basic information that is in criminal justice when you get an associate's degree. All this information that I'm discussing is all the information that you learn in college. And besides that information in college, it's other information that I learned in Europe. Because Europeans have similar laws to what we have. We have similar certain jurisdictions. The jurisdictions may be different. It may be the United Kingdom may go under Parliament or Parliament rules or regulations, but the laws are essentially similar. But you cannot point a gun at somebody or say in 2035 we're going to go eco-friendly, energy efficient. Meanwhile, you have all these gas companies that have so much oil. You have to prove it. You have to prove it on reasonable doubt that you have no gas, and we have to go to this new system. The other thing is you are not allowed to, I'm going to say this is unconstitutional to begin with, you cannot force or mandate someone to do something without their permission. That has to do with even with whether it's HIPAA, whether it has to do with the Family Protection Acts as well. You cannot do anything without the person's permission. You don't have my permission. It's just plain and simple. I'm pulling you over. What is the reason you're pulling me over? That's the first thing I'm going to say to the cop when I get pulled over. Officer, what is the reason I'm getting pulled over? I want your driver's license, this, and that. What is the reason? Do you have a reasonable suspicion? Do you have probable cause to pull me over? Those are the two initiatives. You have to have reasonable suspicion of someone committing an act when you get pulled over, or you have to have probable cause to pull somebody over. If they don't have any of those, you just be quiet and demand you want to speak to a supervisor, and you don't even open the door. You don't have to give your name, your driver's, or you don't give any of that stuff. You don't cooperate with a tyranny police officer at any point. And if they don't, another thing, I'm going to say something to you guys. In these other states, they should have regulation and laws. You should go under the same laws. When you want to play this democracy. New York is a democracy. California is a democracy. Let me take this off because this just upsets me when it comes to this stuff. You want to call New York or California democracy? Why don't you go to the sheriff's or police department and go take their continual education course? Because most of you people in the South, most of you people in the Midwest, you should go to New York and go into a college course. And you know what? They should mandate all you officers, all you police and sheriffs, you should take a mandatory 2-year course where you have continual education. Every 5 years, you've got to take the course. You don't take the course, you don't have a job. You see every police officer obeying the law. Because I'm saying this, and I'm going to say this nicely, you're in the 13th grade. You have no idea what you're doing. Every attorney that has went through court, they have laughed at officers. Our United States is a laughing stock in the country. It is a laughing stock. We are as low as can be with education. You people in the South, I'm sorry to say, I don't like saying anything in a nasty or condescending way. But you should go, why don't you guys have 2 officers that are from Florida or etc. come up here, take a training course, and see what it's like to be an officer up here. You'll have people that are down there start changing their decisions. Because the rules and regulations in New York and California, they're a lot more stricter than those southern countries. You can't just pull people over for the sake of pulling people over. Those troopers don't play games. Can you imagine you imagine you're in Arizona, you pull those shenanigans where you say, I don't want to go to work or I don't want to do this or that. You know what they would do to you in New York if you were a police officer? Because my relatives were police officers. They were EMTs or police officers and etc. They'd say to you, they'd bring you into the office and they say you're fired and you wouldn't have a job. That's the problem in New York and California that most of your other states can't handle. And I'm sorry to say this, as a person that's understand the rules and regulations as an advisor, an accountant, I am not carrying your other states. Let me repeat that. As a New Yorker, and even when I was in California, I am not carrying your behavior anymore. Most of New Yorkers, we have carried the rest of the states, and you have done nothing. You have been as I'm telling you guys, you have been as lazy as can be. And this is why China and Russia are just going through us like no tomorrow. It's because of this behavior. You're too much on the phone instead of doing your job. And I am half your age. I'm not even near your age. But I don't tolerate that behavior. This is the reason why the military has to change. Do you know I had relatives of mine that were in the Cold War that would see behavior. If they saw behavior like they saw behavior from you that happened recently with these videos, you'd get your ass kicked. They would kick your ass. You wouldn't have a military pension or whatever. You'd be fired on the spot. And you can't do that behavior. It's unacceptable. In my opinion, you're not a military officer. You're a nobody. You don't pull those shenanigan behaviors. You know how many years relatives of mine, 20, 30, 40 years they had in the military, and they're watching these videos, they're getting sick to their stomach. And our country is getting laughed at. And it's an embarrassment. And I'm embarrassed. And I'm not even near as many of your people's ages. You watch pornography. You're on the TikTok or whatever. You're watching stuff. Why don't you get off of this and start reading the Holy Scriptures and start changing your life and start being a better person? Why are you guys so worried about people like my age? Meanwhile, you have people out there that are doing inappropriate behavior. You're letting your kids go out there and do half a dozen shenanigans. You know, in the Italian and Irish culture, 10 o'clock on the dot, you better be home. You're not home. You're doing some sort of chore or something like that. You got to have these kids do some sort of chores or something like that. Can you imagine? I can imagine that with my grandfather. I was with both my older relatives and forget about it. If I ever did any of that stuff, they'd go crazy. And there was no such thing as no. You either do what they say, and that's it, or out the heck you go. And you go to the real world. And they say, welcome to the real world. And that's the behavior that needs to change in this country. Don't be doing these videos. This is disgusting. You're making me embarrassed as a taxpayer. And I didn't sign up for any of these shenanigans to begin with. We need to change in the country. We ain't changing with this behavior. And it's unacceptable. Unacceptable. And it will not be tolerated. So thank you guys. Have a good day.